From the town of Tyngsborough, I'm Roni Camille, and this is Entering Tyngsborough. Coming up on the podcast, after 35 years of public service and law enforcement, Rich Howe, Tyngsborough's top cop, is retiring. You lived here for a period of time.
Yeah, 25 years. I have a lot of great memories, and I've developed some real, friendships. I became the 10th chief in the history of the department in 2013. So I hope that I leave, a lasting legacy of what leadership looks like.
This is Entering Tyngsborough, a podcast from the town of Tyngsborough on all things happening in town government and the community. I'm Roni Camille. Thanks for being here. We're having candid conversations about what's happening here in town. Today on the podcast, we speak with Rich Howe, the Chief of Police for Tyngsborough, who after nearly 35 years of being in law enforcement will retire from his role on October 1st. We had a chance to chat with him one-on-one for one final time as Chief of Police here on the podcast to reflect on his career and his time here in town. No questions off the table. Let's dive in. How you feeling?
I'm feeling okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's good. You're counting it down.
Counting it down, yeah. Trying to end strong, obviously, but it's an interesting feeling. But I had kind of prepared for it for a while, and here we are. It's reality.
Absolutely, sure. So, if you've watched or listened to the podcast, I usually ask people, this is our public affairs, program that we produce. My first question is always, so exactly what is your role and title in town? But people know what you do. You're the top, department head for the police department. Tell me, how did you get here?
How did I get here? Well, 34 years. I started at 19 in actually Billerica as a reserve intermittent officer, and dating myself. I think that was maybe 1987-ish, 88. A couple years out of high school, and started there. Then I went out of state. There was a big hiring freeze in Massachusetts. Economy was tough, and I had taken the civil service exam. I was way down on the list. It was just a lot of departments were laying off, etc. I went out of state for a few years, got my certification. I came back and ended up in Tyngsborough.
You went to Vermont.
Yes.
And what was that like?
It was interesting. The town I was at was a town called Brattleboro, Vermont, which for Vermont standards was a mini city. And so we were one of the only 24-hour agencies. And I got lucky. The police chief there was very progressive. He actually came from, I think, a 500-member department in Florida.
Wow.
And he was a well-educated man, very articulate. And he went there for several reasons, was eventually to retire, but I think he ended up doing 10 years, and he ended up actually their town manager. Became close, my wife and his wife eventually, I wouldn't say close, obviously a big age difference, but I think he took me under his wing, gave me a chance as a young kid, and I think there was a sense of, give me a chance, I'm not going to disappoint you, I think was the comment he told me, got me the job in the interviews. And, I had a passion for this job, and it's hard to believe all this time has gone by, and it's changed so much, the career, but I still do. And but when you're in it that long and you do that, experience does matter, and seeing the changes and going through that. But I always knew where I wanted to end up, and this was a focus of mine. That's why I went back and got my education. I went and got my law degree, and then I went back and got a second master's when I thought I might be competing for the chief's job. And, things work out the way they work out sometimes. It's hard to believe I'm in my 12th year as chief here, and it's a long time.
Let's talk about that. Did you always envision yourself as being chief of a department somewhere?
I did.
And you grew up in Billerica, or did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Drake. I lived in Billerica till I was about 5 years old. Then I grew up in Drake. So.
And law enforcement is in your family. Your dad
Yeah.
was a police officer
Yeah.
and retired as a detective.
Very esteemed detective. In his day, he was the man. He was the person around here that other departments called. In fact, I remember when I got hired here, Chief Chronopoulos at the time, he knew my dad very well. And my dad used to get brought in. Tingsborough was very small, limited investigative capabilities. My dad was a detective for most of his career, and he would get called as an expert in certain types of investigations. And so that was kind of neat. And I got some years on before my dad retired in early 2000s, where I was on the Tyngsborough PD and he was still on the job. And I have, I have cousins and I have other relatives that are in law enforcement. So, yeah.
You mentioned earlier.
Excuse me, and my brother is a national police officer. Oh, he would have killed me if I forgot him. He's done a really good job. He's made our dad very proud, and he's been on Nashua. Forgive me, Brian, I might be off on this. I think about 7 years now.
Sure.
And I came out of the military, and and it, runs in our family, I guess.
Good to know as a Nashville resident that there's somebody on the force there.
Yeah.
You mentioned you've been in this, obviously a long time, coming up on 35 years, and you briefly mentioned, the change. How has your career in law enforcement, and especially in this role as police chief, evolved nationally and here in Tyngsborough?
You mean as chief or just law enforcement in general?
You know what, as law enforcement in general.
Yeah. Well, I mean, law enforcement in general, let's be honest, if you go back to, the days my dad went in, there were a million jobs, and they were just begging people to get in. And frankly, salaries were very low. Educational standards were very low. And it's a much different dynamic. And frankly, a lot of it back then was, were you tough enough to be a police officer? We need you. Now it's, we want the people that, there are moments that you're going to need to be strong, and, you're going to get that occasional person who you're going to have to get into a wrestling match or to get them in cuffs and those kind of things. But our expectations of officers are completely different than they were, say, 30 years ago. And now we're looking for officers who have that social skill, the speaking skills, verbal judo, as we like to nickname it, and the ability to take someone in a frantic state, which we deal with people sometimes in their worst, their worst situations, right, and high stress. The best police officers now are the police officers that can go into a situation like that and talk someone down, to calm them down. So there doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to end up with a use of force situation, or, to go bad. And I will say I've watched the evolution of this, and officers have become really, really good at it. And this job is not for everyone, but the ability to balance that and be able to do that to me is the most impressive police officer. One that can come in and, understand he's strong and he's going to do his job, but he's able to settle things down. It's a good thing to see, and it's where we need to be, and that's evolving as well. So.
And since you became chief 12 years ago, the department is a different department than it was then and now. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Well, I mean, policing itself. So, think about the last 11, 12 years. We've gone through multiple national incidents involving police excessive use of force, or, even if they didn't turn out to be found as excessive force, but allegations, or we've seen videos that just some are horrific. Let's be honest. Let's call them what they are. And law enforcement has had an opportunity to, and a need, obviously, to evolve and radically change. And I think in a lot of ways, law enforcement has, but with anything else, there's a lot of improvement to still be made and a long way to go.
How does the department kind of process all these, national events? And, I mean, does it affect the psyche? Does it affect the policy and the way you guys do business?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, it certainly, it can't help, it should affect you. And it can be frustrating too. I mean, to be quite honest with you, Ronnie, when you see something happen that's 3,000 miles away, and it's literally antithesis. It's the opposite of anything that we stand for. Anything that I've been with Tyngsborough for 29 years. It's the opposite of what we stand for. Excessive use of force, discrimination, that type of behaviors that unheard of, and absolute zero tolerance here. To see what appears to be other places in the country, which there is tolerance for it, and there's a different. I want to be careful here, but there's a different viewpoint on how to handle that kind of stuff, and maybe they've been a little bit slower with reform. We have a process. If our officers have any use of force, for example, even prior to the reforms that came down, we have a process right here in Tyngsborough, as do, I think, most all local towns around here that I've had the pleasure of working with, where there's a use of force situation. We arrested Jim Smith last night. He resisted arrest. Here's what happened. Our officers are required to submit a use of force report. That goes to a supervisor. That supervisor reviews it. That review goes up to the deputy chief. The deputy chief reviews it. That review goes to the chief. There's processes in place.
And those were in place way before, 4 years ago, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts instituted these reform laws. You had these policies set way before that, correct?
Yeah, so when Chief Mulligan came into the department in 2006, I believe, 2007. So 2007 actually, I had just started law school. And I was in my first year of law school, and I remember he was trying to get out and come out and get to know the officers. And he came out, and we had a couple discussions and plans, and I wasn't sure where my next plans were going to be, quite frankly. I was a little frustrated with things and I wasn't quite sure where my career was going to go. But I had started law school, and I was, very serious about it and finishing it and going from there. And Chief Mulligan actually asked me if I wanted to be the accreditation manager. And I remember it. We talk about it now. I said, sure, what's that? And so he explained it to me. And it was something that we didn't have here in Tyngsborough.
Correct.
And so he had me work with a sergeant at the time, Don Cudmore, who ended up as the chief in Georgetown, who we became chief at the same time in 2013. It took me 3 years working with individuals in the department, but I was the accreditation manager. 2010, we became, I believe, the 38th department to become certified in Massachusetts. And, for people that aren't familiar with it, it is actually kind of a big deal. There's certain things criteria we had to meet for MPAC standards, Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. And a lot of those revolve around how we handle use of force, how we handle, implicit bias, motor vehicle stops and complaints, and how we process our internal affairs and professional standards complaints. Those are revamped with policy. And so, starting back in 2007, and when I finished certification, we had vastly more professional policies. And it's not just enough to have pieces of paper. Now you have to actually follow them. You have to actually prove and show that. So I was proud of that, but it changed the department. And the next step of that is, when I came in as chief in 2013, we had to kind of take it to the next step. And we've definitely grown on that. We've definitely expanded some of those things. But I will tell you, a lot of these issues, even prior to police reform that came through in 2018-ish, 2019, we were already doing these things. So I am proud of that.
And besides the accreditation, can you discuss some other community issues or initiatives that you've kind of, in your time as chief, or even throughout your time here in Tyngsborough, that you've kind of rolled out?
Yeah, well, I can say, going back, social media. Me and this guy named Ronnie Camille, way back when, I felt that we needed to be on social media. You felt we needed to be on social media. And it wasn't,
yes.
Let's be honest, it probably wasn't a priority of the department at the time. but it was a priority for us, and it was a priority for me. I felt like we were missing something. And I remember back in the days, and I get it, small town. I remember as a young patrolman here, the little son would call, hey, anything going on? And even if we had something pretty significant going on, the stock answer was, nope, nothing happening here. I always felt like it should be the opposite, that we should be open and transparent, because first of all, people need to know, and they have a right to know what we're doing. But it also, it's good for morale. It enhances, why are our police officers here? Why do we need more police officers? Why do we need, police cruisers and all these different things? Well, here's why. And that kick-started something. And we have, I think just Facebook alone, we have over 7,000 followers, which for a community our size is significant. I'm really proud of that program. We started that during my time. We expanded the school resource officer program. We had one. I worked with the vocational school, obviously a very large school district, and I was able to work out an agreement with the school superintendent that they would pay for salary. We added 2 officers. That's significant. That really is significant. And we now have 3 full-time officers, so school resource officers. In a community this size, that is also something that is not typical. It really isn't.
And you have more officers on the department that are trained and accredited through, because being a school resource officer is different than being a certified police officer.
It requires special certifications and special training. And so what we've done is, you don't want a single point of failure. And if you have 3 school resource officers, well, they're going to need time off. Things are going to happen. They're going to have to go to court. They're going to have to take a sick day, bereavement, or whatever that might be. But we want is to make sure we have continuous coverage in the schools, and we have the certified officers. So it's a win-win, really, because we're giving other officers the chance to get certified, get trained in something new. And then down the road, also, if there's an opening, we have people ready to go into those spots. So we've, I think we probably have roughly 6 other officers that are certified at this point. And that'll continue. We're going to continue to do that. But speaking of programs, we have a lot of other programs that have been initiated through the years. As Trunk or Treat and Safety Day has really become something popular. And we just started Coffee with the Cop. It was Coffee with the Chief, but it's Coffee with the Cop over the summer at the Senior Center. I wish we had done that a long time ago. And we have numerous other things that officers do also that, maybe aren't advertised all the time. We try to get as much on social media as possible, but I'm really proud of this department and the individuals who, do things and develop programs. Officer Tim Sullivan, every year, he does a program, does the Pink Patch program. There's multiple ones through the year, and I'm sure I'm not catching everything, but
Sure. I want to go back. You mentioned social media in the schools, and while we're taping this, it's early September. The week before, there was once again, a national, that made headlines, a shooting down in the community of Winder, Georgia. And I have a printout here from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, which is a statewide agency. They put out kind of a statement of they addressed the incident, but said, here are these various resources, and which I found remarkable. As a chief of an agency, how important is that interaction with the community through those means of social media without, I would say, ruining the investigation that's active?
Mm-hmm. Again, this is I think that change that we went through, and I'm proud to be part of. We're the transparency. I think getting out ahead of these stories, there's something to be said about setting what's going to be spoken about. People are going to talk, and unfortunately, look at our politics, look around. There's a ton of misinformation out there, and a lot of people just believe what they instantly see. I think getting ahead of a story, I think framing it and getting the information out, and hopefully you're touching a lot of people in getting some facts out, or even telling people, stand by. We don't have all the facts yet. Here's what we know. There's going to be an investigation. Please bear with us. We want to get all the facts too. Don't jump to conclusions. And that can work both ways. And frankly, we see that in police use of force situations, for example. Misinformation about, a news organization will post a 30-second video, but they didn't show the 2 minutes before, which actually exonerate the officer. And the opposite can be true, and we know that.
And in that social media post from GBI, and it says there, we understand the community's desire for information and acknowledge the fear many students are feeling. We are asking our community partners to provide support for our students during this difficult time. It is important to validate these feelings, but we also encourage them to report any suspicious activity to school administration ASAP.
Yeah.
I've never seen a law enforcement agency going that route. It's usually they stick to the facts, but I mean, how is that important with that whole community building?
I think, first of all, each community maybe works a little bit different, but that's also being in touch with your community, having the community pulse. I've always felt, and I think I've proven it, that I've definitely have the pulse here in our community, and that's important. Having those relationships in town, having the understanding. I don't want to hear a bunch of people around me just telling me how great we are. I want to hear what the problems are. I want to hear what we're not doing right, or what you think we're not doing right, even if I disagree with you. And there's an example of, they wanted to get out ahead of this. They know their community. They know what's going on. There's finger pointing. There's other things. And unfortunately, with those situations, it's horrific, right? Two teachers and 2 students lost their lives. And it's already horrific enough. But then when people start coming up with theories, and there's, the conspiracy theories or misinformation without facts, it can be dangerous. It can cause more danger for other people. You don't know what's going to happen. And I think one of the best things a police agency, and frankly, they should be taking a leadership role, is doing what they did. And I loved what they did. And getting right out there, that message got out to a lot of people. You're reading it here, in Tyngsborough, and that's in Georgia. And it resonates, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And lastly, before we should kind of move on, the department and other, neighboring communities held kind of a safety training at the Greater Lowell Technical High School. Is the region and this department ready should something like this happen?
Yes. The flat answer is yes. Each situation, you can never prepare for every situation that's happened, but what I can say is that we prepare in this community, and that is an example. That's a large training. We had it right here in Tyngsborough, hosted many other agencies. These are highly professional people, not only teaching this, but people that came here to learn. We have our own people as well, and we are ready, and we continue to, train and prepare, for what we hope obviously will never happen, but that's the job, and that's what the public expects from us.
Chief, you've dealt with a lot of challenging situations in your career. What advice would you give somebody coming in on, navigating the various challenges, whether it's going out on a call or, just overall things that you've dealt with in your career?
Are you saying as police chief, or just in general as an officer?
Both.
Okay. Specifically, what kind of calls in general?
Well, yeah, sure. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, as a police officer, I think this is all. There's nothing, not recreating the wheel here, right? Honesty, having ethics, morals. One of the things I learned a long time ago, and I didn't create this, I got it from somebody else, and then I used it when I was a field training officer. And I used to make the statement, and well before everybody had a cell phone anyways, always consider yourself being recorded, what you're doing, number one. But number two, don't do anything that you wouldn't be proud of your grandparents picking up the newspaper tomorrow and seeing on the front page of the paper. If that wouldn't be something that you would think your grandparents, for example, would be proud of, you probably wouldn't, you shouldn't be doing that, right? There's certain things that are human elements that we know we shouldn't be doing. So I think police officers, obviously, it's a more public position. There's authority where there's already going to be people that just don't like you just because of the uniform you wear, right or wrong, and frankly, usually wrong. 99.9% of the police officers I've met in my career are outstanding human beings. There's always going to be bad apples. There is. It's human nature. You can't get around that. But I think doing the job best way as a human being you can. And by the way, if you don't want to be in this career or you want to be doing other things that you shouldn't be, maybe this just isn't the career for you. But I think going into it, having those base ethics, and you're responsible for your actions ultimately. You can't blame it on other people. You certainly can't blame it on the people that have to hold you responsible. Accept responsibility. Try to learn from your mistakes. But as a police officer, especially now, transparency. You're a public figure. You're being recorded. You should be waking up every day, coming into work, and every call you should make. Treat people like they're your own family. Treat people like you would want to be treated, and with decency and respect, even if it's dealing with somebody who doesn't particularly like you because of what you do for a living.
Certainly. And in the past, you've mentioned a strong stance on zero tolerance for what you've just said. And so can you share how, that policy has kind of shaped the department's culture and the public perception?
Yeah, it's, again, I don't think we're recreating the wheel, but even prior to, the irony of it's no secret of the stuff that we went through, and we had some investigations and that involved feds, and it was not enjoyable. It was not an enjoyable time. It was incredibly ironic, and I'm going to be politically correct here, interesting to see people going after me because of their personal relationships, but not really paying attention to the facts. And the facts are what matter. The facts are still there. And the facts prove that everything that was done correctly. And it was the only way to do them. Ironically, after being told that, things should have been handled a different way, for example, or should have been handled in the back room, and there shouldn't have been formal investigations or anything like that, it's now mandated. It's now mandated through posts, through the police certification
and post
commission.
is, for the people that might be watching, listening for the first time, is?
Post was created out of police reform, and it is the organization, it is the committee that the governor assigns to certify and decertify police officers. And part of that certification process is every chief has to swear and sign a document attesting to a police officer's, first of all, ability to be a police officer, right? And that they have moral character, etc., to do the job. But, for example, regarding investigations, it's now mandated. Some of the things that weren't mandated in the past. If a chief, for example, was, let's just, making an example, nothing specific, there was an investigation going on inside the department, and they chose not to do an internal investigation because of political pressure from a local politician, because somebody knows somebody. Well, guess what? Now, if a police chief did that, the police chief gets decertified. And the post commission has final say on that certification, decertification of the officer. It's mandated. Those investigations are mandated. Even if an officer resigns or retires, for example, during an investigation, it's still mandated to complete the investigation. Why? It's for the integrity of the profession. It's to show that this officer, and frankly, when we do internal investigations, a lot more times than not, the officer gets cleared. We exonerate our officer because it's found that the facts are a little bit different than maybe what they were accused of. And that's good. That's okay. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And we have to accept that. We have to be responsible, particularly the people that are managing the agency. And that has to be respected. And, it is what it is.
Do you see this model of posts created here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts going nationwide? I mean, is it nationwide? Or?
So, yeah, in different forms. I mean, I can't say whether or not it's in every single state. I know many states that it is, and they have some form of post. And police certification, I can't imagine anything less than it will be national in every state if it's not already. And in fact, our Massachusetts Certification Commission, typically when they decertify, it goes national. It gets reported to a national database as well. And, there's a process, just like everything else, there's a process. It's got to be based on facts. It's got to be based on established facts. It's not based on personal relationships or personal feelings or anything else. And it's an unfortunate part of it. It's not enjoyable, none of it, but boy, is it something that was needed. The rollout was a little bit rough for Post, and it was done a little bit hastily, but they're catching up now. And I know that they're trying to get everything caught up. I see it as a very big positive for law enforcement and the public. And so it's I don't know that we were a model, but I know the Mass Chiefs Association, I think 15 years ago, was requesting this from our state to have this kind of commission, and so we were glad to finally see it happen.
All right, we're about, kind of 30 minutes into this conversation. I want to kind of go down the hill over it and just kind of reminisce of it. What will you miss the most about being police chief? And are there any particular moments or achievements you're going to cherish once you leave the office and sign off at the end of the month?
I mean, there's a lot. I'm not going to probably touch on some of them, but I'm going to miss the people. I'm going to miss, some who definitely won't miss me, I'm sure. But on a personal basis, a lot of people. I built a lot of relationships in this community. You
lived here for a period of time.
Yeah, 25 years. I raised my family here, and I have a lot of great memories, and I've developed some real, friendships. And anybody that knows me, I think I'm a pretty sociable person as well, and a friendly person. But there's a difference between building a real relationship and then something that's just because he works here kind of thing. I've developed some really strong relationships with people in the community, and some friends. I've had some friends over 30 years in this community, and just other people have just been extremely supportive, and I'm going to miss that. I don't know if it's a later question, but I'll just say it. When we went through what we went through for a while, and we had some push that people would rather get rid of me as chief than deal with the issues that we were dealing with. This community came out overwhelmingly in record numbers, and overwhelmingly elected 2 individuals who came in with a very different set of standards. And I was very proud to see how many people came out, how many people recognized that what was being done was wrong, and it was wrong. That's fact.
How did that moment influence the change in police operations and policy in the department?
Well, I can tell you, not answering directly as far as us in policy, I will tell you, I had more people reach out from outside this community, town managers, police chiefs. I can't even tell you how many people. It was just unbelievable, recognizing what was going on, and all obviously encouraging me and stick in there, because this happens in other communities, and it doesn't always end up the way it ended up here. It's very easy to kind of bail in that fight. I don't know that it changed what our policies were, because we were already doing the right things. It's not something you can prepare for, frankly. Wasn't something that I wanted. Wasn't something that it's the last thing you want to be doing. I want to be working on policy and initiatives and community policing programs, and that's what I envisioned this job would be. And frankly, I spent 4 to 5 years on dealing with these personnel issues instead. And political issues that, in my opinion, most didn't have to happen, and certainly weren't our responsibility. So as a result of that, I think our policies have become stronger, and certainly our experience. And my deputy chief now, it was Chris Chronopoulos at the start of this. Deputy Sean Woods has been here for 6.5 years now, and he's gone through it all, and he can attest. But the experience you build out of it, especially when you're in a small community, you don't feel like you're going to use it. But when you're talking to people from Boston and Lowell and who are reaching out to you and giving you their perspective and really supportive, and they deal with this kind of stuff a lot, it means something. And so I think there's been some changes and some things that we can do a little bit better. But our policies are right on. Our procedures are right on. We have the same process in place when something would happen. We met and we spoke with counsel, and we talked this stuff out and tried to establish facts, and that's all you can do.
What sort of advice would you give to law enforcement officers navigating these sort of political aspects in their roles?
Police officers or chiefs?
Both.
Well, big difference. So as a police officer, first of all, my job, I had always considered my job, and it wasn't always easy because, we found out that there were members, local political people that would be in direct contact with some officers in the department. That creates a problem. Good and bad, maybe just not for personal reasons or, contacting them for other reasons. That's political pressure that no individual police officer, first of all, should ever be dealing with. Number one, it's not their responsibility to be dealing with politics. That's the job of a police chief. So to shield them from that, they shouldn't be dealing with that. They shouldn't have that extra stress or. So I tried to shield people as much as possible from it when it was going on. Most of it was confidential, anyways, and. I think it's important that police officers focus on their job, but ultimately remember what we just talked about. You are solely responsible for your actions. Don't get mad at anybody else for then holding you responsible for something you did. You're much better off just taking responsibility for it. If you screwed up, you screwed up. Take responsibility for it. But blaming somebody else is... that was a head scratcher for me. I'm really shocked by that, to see the level of that with some people. Most people that I know in my orbit take responsibility, learn from mistakes, which we all make, and don't blame others. And I think if you do that, as a police chief, I think you have to have a good foundation. Obviously, you want a department that has good policies. You want to have a department of good leaders and leadership. But I think there's going to be moments that you can either cave to political pressure, you can either cave to what would be the easiest path, or what is the right path, what is the factual path. And that's a decision everybody else has to make. I certainly made that, and I made my decision. And here we are today.
So what do you hope will be your lasting impact on the police department? The police department is coming up to close to being 100 years old. I was going through the history books and found, way back, formed in 1928. So in a few years, it'll be 100 years old. And you've been chief for just a small segment of that time, right? 12 years.
Yeah.
What's your lasting impact?
Well, not the police building is not 100 years old, right? Just
no, the department itself.
Yeah, I think in 1928, I think.
1928,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Chief Lorman, it was his first chief.
Yeah. I learned that when I became chief in 2013. I became the 10th chief in the history of the department in 2013. So I hope that I leave, a lasting legacy of what leadership looks like, what strong leadership looks like. I certainly, frankly, it's disappointing, obviously, but I certainly have people that are not happy with me in this community. But I have an overwhelmingly amount of people that feel the exact opposite. It isn't personal. Never has been, never was, not for a moment. I did my job. I did it to the best of my ability. I did it based on fact. I did it based on what I felt was in the best interest of the police department, the town, and this profession. And I'm proud of it, and I'll continue to be proud of it. I'm not going that far. I'm going to be connected to law enforcement and public safety and public service in other ways. But I stand very proud of how we did things and what we did. I know the next chief, I believe, coming in is going to carry that on. The integrity to do what's right, not what would make your life easier at the moment. I think those are the biggest things, honestly, and I know they're kind of, what everybody says, but it's really true.
Will you leave a note for the next chief on their desk?
I don't know that we do that. You want me to start a tradition? Yeah. Good luck. My mother, rest her soul, that used to be her thing with everything. Good luck. Just good luck. Maybe I'll just say that. I don't know, but I hope. Obviously, Deputy Chief Woods is a very strong candidate, and I hope that he is going to be our next chief. And I'm not sure I need to leave a message for him, but I think the next chief will be in good hands. They're going to make a lot of nice changes that need to be made, some refocus on some things, and that always happens when somebody new comes in, and that's a good thing. I don't look at that as a negative thing at all.
I know we're going all over the place, but you mentioned your mom and your parents. They were such a. Your dad's still around, but your mom passed away. Big impact in your life. Talk about that.
Yeah, my mother.
She worked in town too.
She worked for Drake bus, and she drove a special needs bus for 30 years. My brother Mikey, who passed away 2 years ago, was learning disabled, and he rode in the bus. It was funny because we have pictures of my kids were growing up. My mother would come and pick my daughter Kara up, and sometimes my son Brandon as well, and have them both in the bus and drive them around if me and my ex-wife were working or whatever, and she would take them on the bus, and that's one of their memories. They actually talk about it still.
So much so that your daughter published a book.
Yeah, so she did originally when she was back at she was I think 6 or 7 years old. She did her first little book, and then she recently created a book on and my mother is featured, and they did a great job. Looks just like her, and my daughter did that basically to honor my mother. That's what she did it for, and I can't even begin to tell you how proud I am of her for doing that and putting that together. But she was deeply dedicated to what she did for a living, and it's an underappreciated job, but she was phenomenal with special needs kids and learning disabled kids and people, and did a lot of volunteering, a lot of programs, and so lost her in 2020 through COVID, and then my brother 2 years ago. So
I'm sorry for your loss, Chief. As you approach the end of your career as in law enforcement, what are you looking forward the most once you retire?
You want me to say what everybody says?
I really am. I don't know. I know you. I mean, we've known each other for a long time. We've worked together, and I know you're keeping what's next. But once you're not doing this job, once you're no longer in a job, what is the one thing? Are you going to be hiking? What are you going to be doing?
Well, professionally, I'm not retiring, obviously, and far too young, and my wife would not let me, and that's also, I don't think it's a healthy thing to do. But, it's time to do some other things, and I already teach. I've taught for almost 10 years. I'm going to continue doing that. I'm expanding on that a little bit. I'll be doing some consulting, and some other opportunities are going to, come my way, and I'll kind of cross that bridge. Honestly, some of the same things I think probably everybody says in these situations, but really serious when I say it. spending more time with the people I love and the people who have stood by me. Frankly, my wife deserves a lot more of my time and quality time because I fully admit, one of the things, the job, I think, being attached to, this thing, and I think at the end of the day, there's a difference between quality time and time. And I think more quality time, a little more focus. My grandkids, I think my daughter wants me to take on a babysitting job. That's maybe not quite a full-time babysitting job.
And not just the ice cream run.
But no, I don't babysit my grandkids. My grandkids want to hang out with me. I think, more time with them, but quality time with my wife and others that friends, and got some things planned already, and I think I'm looking forward to that. And frankly, I did put the time in, but I'm also looking forward to taking on these other roles that I'm going to be taking on, and still keeping a foot in public service and in public safety. I'm actually looking forward to the new roles, and so it's kind of exciting, to be quite honest with you.
I'm excited for you. And any last parting words you want to give to the people of Tyngsborough?
I just want to thank people in the community from the bottom of my heart for all the genuine support, the genuine friendships, the genuine encouragement through the years. You're not going to make everybody happy in this job, and I understand that. And you have to develop thick skin. Nothing has ever been personal. I've tried to do what I felt was right, and tried to do the job well. I've tried to grow the department in a professional way. I think we're on the right path, and I think the next steps for the department are going to be positive ones. But we're deeply ingrained in the community policing. We do more than ever, and I think that's only going to improve with the new chief coming in. And I'm just deeply humbled and deeply appreciative of the community that I've gotten a chance to serve and work for. And I feel really fortunate. I'm really glad that I've been able to maintain those relationships, and the people that have reached out to me, many people that have reached out to me. I'm looking forward to what comes next. So.
Chief Howe, Tyngsborough's 10th police chief. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. And, by the way, it's always been an honor, not only working with you, collaborating with you, but, developing a friendship with you. You're a class act. The town is lucky to have you. And I really appreciate your friendship and your professionalism through the years. I've always been really, really impressed with you, and I wish you the best. And I know we're going to be in touch. So
thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was Rich Howe, Tyngsborough's police chief, who is set to retire on October 1st, 2024. Now, there is going to be a public farewell for the chief before he gets to sign off at the end of the month. That is happening on September 25th, starting at 4 p.m. until about 6 over at the Old Town Hall on 10 Kendall Road. All is welcome. Now, that's all the time that we have for the podcast of Entering Tyngsborough. Special thanks to our friends over at Westford Cable Access Television for allowing us to use their facility for this episode of the podcast. You can learn more about your town's municipal government by visiting the town's website at tyngsboroughma.gov. I'm Roni Camille. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, wishing you the best of goodbyes.